What was your role as a supervisor there?
Well, it was my job to proofread information, to proofread affidavits for search warrants, to approve payments, and in some instances, physically meeting up with an informant to be there to witness a payment by a detective. And so certainly I was no stranger to the good that informants can do, but also the bad that they can do. I mean, we are asking a lot of our undercover detectives and investigators in dealing with informants. You know, you're asking them to place their trust in someone that, by their very nature, is probably not the most trustworthy person, right? This person is betraying the trust of whatever criminal organization they're working for, and I might add that that's a criminal organization that will probably hurt or kill them should they find out that they've been betrayed. So if that's not enough to put the fear of betrayal into these people's hearts, you know, they know that an officer or a deputy is not going to be able to physically harm them in any way. So if they're not afraid of those people, what makes them think that they're going to be afraid to give us bad information?
Mm-hmm. How would you guys decide who would be an informant? Or how does law enforcement decide this is a good person to use as an informant?
Well, and I can't go into all the specifics of it because of the nature of what they do. I mean, I can tell you that we needed somebody to prove themselves up, to show that they were trustworthy, to establish at least some sort of a knowledge of the information that they were going to be giving out. So maybe they could give you information on a couple of cases that they were already familiar with. Maybe they could take you and introduce you to somebody. But we needed to show them that this was somebody that, at least on the surface, we felt that we could trust before going further.
Mm-hmm. And is the intention when you're using an informant, you're trying to get to their supplier, right? You're looking, this guy might be a smaller dude, but there's a bigger guy up here that you're trying to go after. Is that typically what you're trying to use the informant for?
Well, that's typical. But what I've seen, and obviously we're no strangers to this, some of your informants are really just eliminating competition, right? This informant's really just another drug dealer, and he or she is eliminating competition. They may be giving information on somebody that stole a wife or a girlfriend from them in the past. They may be giving information on people that actually work for them, underlings, because that's disposable to them. They can go find another underling to stash drugs for them. So they're going to protect their higher ups at the cost of their underlings or their direct reports. Not to mention, I've seen many a jilted lover become a pretty good informant. I don't think there's anything that says sweet revenge more so than giving up a ex-wife or ex-husband.
So is that helpful? I mean, they're targeting people is what it sounds like when it's that's the situation. How do you make sure that the information they're providing is valuable to law enforcement and climbing that ladder to the taller guy on the pole there?
Well, to a certain extent, you've got to trust them, right? I mean, obviously they've got to establish their credibility. They've got to be able to show that they know what they're talking about, and they've got to be able to show that this information is sincere information. Do we ever get lied to? Absolutely. Again, these people are many times deceptive by nature, and so it's incumbent upon the detectives, the investigators, to work that informant, not the other way around.
Were you aware of what happened back then?
You know, we always heard whisperings of it. At that time that was occurring, that those allegations were occurring, I was actually at City Narcotics. And yes, we heard about it. We heard about it from our own informants that had run-ins with the county folks. And so I can't really speak too intelligently on it. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I know that the vast majority of those people are gone from this agency, and some of them from the profession altogether. But with that being said, I just knew that I wanted to move this agency forward, and I think we've done a good job of doing that.
So when did you become aware of these cases that were recently, within the past year, announced by the district attorney's office? How did you become aware of them?
We found out about it this year. In fact, Chief Sanford came to me and said, hey, there's some problems going on with some cases, but the issue is these cases are a couple of years old, and they're just now working their way through the criminal justice process. And so, as I mentioned, on these cases, there were other indicators of narcotics activity going on, separate from what the CI had told us about, separate from what we believe the CI was doing in these cases. There were other indicators that there was drug dealing going on. So with that being said, this is fully within the purview of the district attorney. Again, talking about somebody that I believe has a strong moral compass, and he's always going to do what's right, even if it's not the popular thing. I trust Mr. Gonzalez to make the right decision. And so when they informed us that they were going to be dismissing these cases, all we can do is agree with them and keep doing what we do. Well, with us, and I can tell you there's been a shift in how we conduct narcotics investigations and narcotics, all our procedures, right? We, not necessarily because of this case, but we just felt that it was a better way of doing things. We restructured our covert operations unit. We reformed our uniform gang unit. We really shored up our intelligence gathering capabilities. I mean, we're sitting on a gold mine of intelligence activity right across the street, 4,000 inmates that are a treasure trove of information. So we restructured our organized crime group to still focus, yes, on narcotics. It's a part of what they do, but they also focus on illegal gambling, human trafficking, anything that generates money for criminal organizations. And then our job is to dismantle those organizations. What I can tell you is that the way we do things now, as part of our organized crime group, it's more of an intelligence-led effort. And I think that following tried and true intelligence is a better way of doing things. With that being said, I don't think that informants are ever going to fully go away. Informants maybe are like a pencil, right? There's been so many other space-age technologies that make handwriting so much more advanced than just a stubby pencil, but we still use stubby pencils. Well, by that same token, I don't think informants are ever going to be something that goes away altogether. We're still going to have to rely on them. But it's just the matter of how we vet the information that they're telling us, and maybe can we corroborate it with some intelligence? Can we corroborate it with tape-recorded phone calls or whatever else it may be?
Was there any sort of internal review of what happened, kind of the missteps and how things happened the way they did?
Well, I think that's still occurring. And what we've been able to tell at this point is that I still don't believe that there was any malice on the part of the deputy involved. I think he was relying upon the best information that he had. Indeed, there was other evidence found to corroborate what was being said. However, if it was determined by the prosecutor that this information, this part of what was found isn't usable, then that's the foundation for the entire case.
Do you have policies and procedures in place for dealing with confidential informants in this type of work?
We do.
Okay, we requested it and we were told it's confidential. What's confidential about it?
Well, we do have to be guarded with some of the information in how to deal with these people. The last thing we need is for somebody to read our policies and procedures and go, for example, a drug dealer to get a hold of our policies and procedures and go, wait a second, that's how they did it to me, therefore the guy that I was with when that happened must be the guy. Next thing you know, we're dealing with a homicide because our policies and procedures got out to the wrong hands. So it's really because of a lot that we deal with. Although, yes, on the surface it's drugs, all of it is a matter of life and death if it gets into the wrong hands.
How often is that policy and procedure manual updated?
I wouldn't say it's one of those things that's updated every year, whether it needs it or not. Again, I think that it's something that we're constantly learning from, and as new cases develop, not just here in Beck County, but other parts of the state, other parts of the country, we're certainly going to look at how does that factor into what we're doing now? Is there a better way of doing it?
Right.
Sometimes there's different ways that an informant can prove themselves. They may take an undercover along on an undercover deal to establish that they know who this person is and they know where this location is. There's a variety of ways that we would test an informant's knowledge and then prove their credibility.
In this case, just according to the warrant, it appears that it was only a controlled buy that had happened. Are you aware of anything else that they would have done?
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything else that they would have done.
Okay. So the allegation is that informant planted 2 pounds of meth behind a wall in one location, and then a few weeks later put it in a box at another location, 2 pounds. And both of them happened just prior to deputies showing up there. How does that happen? I mean, if there's surveillance and supervision, shouldn't this person, before he goes to the home, be patted down or checked to make sure he doesn't have anything on him? What kind of surveillance would have been going on to make sure this guy's not going there and planting evidence, or anybody's doing that?
Well, I can tell you that informant going into a home is not always that they're sent in by us. Sometimes the information may come as, listen, I was watching the football game at somebody's house last night, and I saw them bringing in duffel bags. They opened up those duffel bags, and they were full of kilos of cocaine. Mm-hmm. So the information may come just as a, I guess, byproduct of this person living their normal life. Now, granted, their normal life is different than yours and mine. We're not typically watching the Monday night football game at a buddy's house, and then they start bringing in duffel bags full of cocaine. But remember, these are criminal informants that we're dealing with. So his or her normal everyday life may look drastically different than yours or mine. I would hope that it does. And so some of it may come not as because we sent them into that buddy's house. They may have just happened to be at a birthday party and witnessed some criminal activity that they're going to turn and give us information about.
But they wouldn't raid the house 20 minutes later.
There's really no set timeline. There are instances.
I mean, but it takes time for a narcotics unit to get together, wouldn't it? I mean, it seems, according to the people who were arrested in this, that this informant shows up with a little girl, asked to use the bathroom.
Sure.
They go into the bathroom, they come out, they leave. Less than 20 minutes later, here comes the sheriff's office raiding the house.
Well, there's no set timeline for when an informant is going to come out and tell you, hey, I just saw something in there. If we're set up and ready to go, then that may be the case. Again, without knowing all the ins and outs of the case and knowing that there's stuff in here that I can't necessarily touch base with you on in any great detail, I can tell you there is no set timeline for when and how we go in.
Right. Is there any surveillance of these informants to make sure that they're not, or a pat down to make sure before they go into a location that you might be watching and you're there, you're around the corner, to make sure that they don't have drugs on them before they go into a location? Well,
when possible there is. When possible there is. But again, without being able to cover every eventuality, every possible scenario with you, I can say that there's certain times when we're just not with that criminal informant at the time that they tell us that they witnessed information. Again, they may be going in there on their own volition, separate and apart from anything we may be doing with them. But with that being said, to the extent possible, we do need to corroborate and keep honest people honest.
Do you have any idea where the drugs came from in these cases that were used? I mean, because as you were mentioning, earlier, these guys are not going to knowingly turn on a cartel if they're working for them. This guy gave up close to $200,000 twice worth of meth in these cases, and there's some. Where would the drugs come from? I mean, are they? There's questions about where those drugs would have come from. There's a large amount of drugs. Sure. It seems unbelievable that this guy would just be donating them, knowing that they're going to be confiscated.
Well, to the layperson, it could be unbelievable, but to somebody that, and again, I'm not going to go into full detail on these cases, but what I can tell you is that perhaps keeping this person out of jail was very, very important to somebody that has ready access to those sorts of drugs, somebody higher up on the food chain than he, and to them it's just an acceptable. It's the cost of doing business to keep this person out of prison. So it's actually not that far outside the realm of possibilities that to somebody it may be worth a couple of kilos to keep this person out because of the information he may have on the person supplying them.
Right. You kind of addressed this, but I want to give you another opportunity. The people who were set up in these cases feel pretty strongly that your deputies had some sort of a knowledge what was going on.
Well, at this point, we don't have any indicator that these deputies, there was any malice on the part of these deputies. But if those folks feel otherwise and they've got more information to bring to bear, we're more than happy to take that information in.
Has there been any sort of reorganizing of the narcotics unit after learning about these cases?
Well, I think that it just happened by virtue of us reorganizing our agency. I think that many of the names that you've seen there have moved on to other parts of the agency. Some are no longer with the agency. So I think that the reorganization just happened as a natural part of the progression of restructuring.
There was no disciplinary
I
action?
don't believe it was done as a result of
Okay.
these cases. No.
So nobody, because I understand that the lieutenant was transferred out of that unit after this, shortly thereafter.
Totally different reason.
Totally different reason. Okay. That lieutenant, I also understand, is on the DA's Brady list. Do you have any idea why that is?
No, sir, I don't, but I have been made aware of that as well.
Would that be a concern to have a lieutenant who's overseeing an operation like that or a unit like that to be on
Absolutely.
the Brady list?
Absolutely, it would be. You know, but with that being said, I don't control who goes on that Brady list, and it's not like I can take any further action. I mean, you're also dealing with an organization that enjoys civil service protection. And
Sure.
so there is only so much I can do for things that occurred many years before I took office.
But has there been any sort of disciplinary action taken on anybody?
Not to my
as a result
knowledge,
of this?
no, sir. No. Well, if an informant is going to be paid, or if they're working off a case, absolutely, we have to keep track of who this person is and monies that have been paid out to them, or they were arrested for this. They were told that there's a contract in place that if they give up this much, then this case goes away. Well, obviously that's something you're going to have to keep track of. Because you don't want to be dismissing cases you don't need to be dismissing. And so, yes, absolutely, there's records kept. But again, we make every effort to streamline the number of people that know about that, because you just never know how that information might get out.
Right. I mean, because there's money being paid, is there like a budget item that is in your budget that you have to set aside each year to pay informants? Or do you know that there's how much money is paid out each year?
There is a part of the budget that's kept as a result of the ongoing nature of what we do. Absolutely. Well, we make sure that we have supervisors, and sometimes managers will go out to pay an informant. Again, you want to make sure that somebody's not, and to be fair, again, I'm not real intimately familiar with what occurred before I was with that other narcotics group. But for example, you don't want somebody going out and paying their brother-in-law, and all of a sudden change his name to John Smith, and they're actually paying here, sign here, Mr. Smith, but it's actually their brother-in-law that's pocketing the money and maybe splitting it with them later on down the road. While that sounds very far-fetched and very movie-like, it's within the realm of possibilities that you need to be watching out for.
Right.
So yes, absolutely. We'll send out our supervisors to make sure that they're supervising that process. Because again, as a supervisor, you're responsible for that money, and you're responsible for making sure that it ends up where it's supposed to be ending up.
Speaking of supervision, it would seem at the very least that there was some sort of lack of supervision for this to happen in 2 cases.
Well, I beg to differ. While we do everything that we possibly can to supervise the goings-on and to scrutinize search warrants, I don't know that it was necessarily a shortcoming on the part of the supervisors. Is there a better way of doing things? Well, I would hope that as we reorganize, we do find better ways of doing things, but I just don't know at this point that we're able to say that it was a lack of supervision.